Hey guys, Satcrafter here. Today I am back for another episode of Anime versus Reality for more Spice and Wolf. That one seemed a bit soft. Not bad, it's just a bit soft. As I do like to do, I like to announce birthdays of anime characters, and I'm pretty sure, as of when I'm recording this, in a few days, it will be Takumi Fujiwara's birthday from Initial D. Yeah, on the 25th. So, as of 3 days of when I'm recording this, and it'll be, the day before I upload it, it'll be Takumi's birthday from Initial D. However, I'm not here to talk about Initial D. Today I'm here to talk about Spice Wolf. We've got 5 episodes to get through, so I better get straight into it. Because it's the day of the plan. And along with Kraft, Holo, and Nora, Martin Liebert is joining them as the person from the Remerio Trading Company. Martin is keen to get to the job immediately, and Nora leads the way to Lamtra. Mr. Remerio hopes the mission goes well, otherwise there'll only be dark days ahead for them. Nora needs to sleep as a shepherd, but Martin wants to keep moving, not knowing that shepherds need to sleep early to guard the sheep in the night, which is necessary for the blend to succeed. It's like, oh yeah, so you keep going, and we'll leave you to die, while we successfully do the right steps to succeed in this plan. It's like, logic. Do you have it? The next day, they arrive at the massive forest, and Martin says it feels like anything could show up in the forest. The path itself winds along the cliff face and the edge of the forest, and when Kraft asks about the wolves and if they'll be, tracking them, Holo answers they're already surrounded. It's like, oh damn. Holo promises to protect Kraft if anything goes wrong, but can't guarantee the safety of everyone else. Kraft's nervousness about the wolves leads to a small jump scare from the neck running past his feet. It's like, whoop. I had to get a cheap jump scare in. Holo tells Kraft that Inek is already aware of Holo's secret, ever since they first met before reaching Ruvenhagen, but she won't respond to such threats. Kraft wonders if Nora has realized she's the one in the most danger if the smuggling operation fails, since she works for the church, worried she won't be able to handle the punishment she will receive if it fails. It's like, yeah. They're still in the forest as night falls, but according to Nora, they'll be near Lamtra by the afternoon if they leave at dawn. Martin goes to get some rest so they don't make mistakes during negotiations tomorrow. So he doesn't make mistakes during negotiations tomorrow. Holo's sleeping position lands her in Kraft's lap, and Nora indicates to her like she's doing to her neck. But before he even gets a chance to do such a endearing thing, Holo is to attention, eyes locked on the forest. She's just like... Nora wakes Martin to get him against the cliff face and adds wood to the fire to make it bigger. Right before Nora blows her horn, Holo protects herself from the sound, which holds the wolves off. It's like, yeah, makes sense that she would have to cover her ears. Martin asks if they've been driven off, and Nora explains that the wolves of this forest rarely howl or show signs of attacking, only watching. Holo finds it odd that they don't howl, saying that there may be something other than wolves in the forest, like zombies. Graf thinks Holo is joking, but she's half serious. It's like, you don't half joke about zombies. That's a way bigger threat than you think. Just one bite and you can infect an entire town like that. Having made it out of the forest, they see Lantra in the distance, and Martin announces it's his turn to do his job. While waiting for Martin to do his job, Nora asks Holo if she's knowledgeable about wolves because of how far she noticed the wolves. Which shocks Graf. It's like, does she know? Holo explains it away as a coincidence, turning the conversation quickly to Graf and Martin and how undependable they are. She asks Nora if Graf looks dependable, and Nora whispers her answer to Holo, which makes her laugh and says Nora's a good judge of character. It's like, making fun of the pretty boy, huh? That's what we all do around here. Apple. Since Holo is traveling along with Graf, Holo finds it strange to ask if she knows about wolves, since she's always next to one. Graf. Boop boop. She then twists it. She twists it around to the truth, saying that Graf is actually the rabbit that she has to care for, so he doesn't die from loneliness. It's like, wait, that part's a lie, because she's the one that's saying she would die from loneliness. Nora thought Holo was a shepherd because Anek is attentive to her, but Holo says Anek might be attracted to her, earning her 2 wide-eyed stares. What did you just say? It's because Nora treasures him deeply that Anek thinks her affection for him is unchanging, which might be why he flirts with others. Nora promises to punish Anek a bit next time he cheats, but she just wants to praise him right now. No matter how the mission goes, Nora will probably be quitting her shepherding job, which Holo seemingly predicted. And my throat is just full of gas. Not connected to the story. Martin returns to Graf, Holo, and Nora with the gold nuggets and shows it to them before closing up the bag and mentioning how they need to find a suitable time to feed the sheep the gold nuggets and pass through the gates. So wait, they do feed? Wait, I thought they had to just attach it to the sheep, not feed it to the sheep. Poor sheep. And like pass through the gates. With night already near, both Graf and Nora decide they need to camp near the forest in preparation for tomorrow, and Holo senses the rain coming. Nora and Martin are racing through the narrow path in the rain, with the sheep and Graf and Holo taking up the rear, with both wolves above and beside them. They're up on the cliff and they're in the forest. One wolf jumps out of the forest to attack Martin and his horse, only to be chased off by Anek. Martin lets the sheep and Anek go ahead of him, and Holo notes how amazing Nora is as a shepherd. Nora is fully aware of the wolves' hunting pattern, how they surround their prey and hunt with caution and cunning, and gives her orders to Anek Oh, wow. Perspicuously. I butchered that. Basically, quickly and clearly, though. Also, by holding the long formation, it makes it hard for the wolves to attack, but the terrible weather is against them right now. Kraft and Holo get surrounded by wolves, and Kraft prepares to defend himself from attacks when Holo stops him and tells the wolves to stay back. It's like a... I don't know how that ability works, because it's not... It's never used again in the show, just the once. Holo says to Nora and Martin to go on ahead, and after they go on, to separate from her as well, when a massive wolf's howl comes from the forest, catching everyone's attention. They're all like, what? Holo explains that their target was never the sheep, but actually her, and that she has to take care of them. Kraft shouts at Martin and Nora to continue forward, which Martin is fine with, but Nora is worried for their safety. Should be worried for the apple safety though, because these are delicious. Holo says Kraft should get away from her, just in case she needs to use the wheat to transform into a wolf form. Kraft won't forgive Holo if she loses, and jokes about, she jokes about if Kraft were handsome, she would kiss him. Holo gives Kraft her cloak to hold on to keep safe, because if she does need to transform, she will be naked when she returns. At least the original version had her give him her clothes to be able to put back on afterwards, but okay. As Holo enters the forest, Kraft shouts he'll see her again, in which she answers with a happy look over her shoulder. Martin and Nora have stopped up ahead. Glad the wolves are no longer chasing, and Martin believes they're dead and wants to continue on, but Nora tells him not to say that. He convinces Nora to keep going, so Kraft and Holo's decision to stay behind and deal with the wolves isn't in vain. And now, a distance from Holo, Kraft sets up camp to dry out Holo's cloak. It's like, gotta make sure this is nice and dry for Holo. Meanwhile, Holo is surrounded by the massive pack of wolves, face to face with the massive wolf, laughing at them for being too young and saying their attitude towards their elders is lacking. Kraft uses a campfire to dry Holo's cloak, and notes how powerless he is when he hears someone else running past him on the path. Running out onto the path, it's three Remerio trading workers, acting upon having heard the situation from Martin. They ask where Kraft's stuff is, and he explains they're just off the path with his horse, so they join him at the makeshift campsite. At the makeshift campsite, they ask where Holo is, and Kraft says she's not with him, and which makes them glad to hear that, and they properly attack them. Looks like Remerio Trading is betraying them as insurance, but they were initially reluctant to attack him because he had Holo with him. Wait. Is that sexism right here? And with Kraft's hands tied behind his back, they let him hold on to Holo's cloak, and also let it slip that they're also going to kill Nora too. Kraft lunges forward, slicing his cheek on the sword against his face, and for his troubles is knocked down by the axe wielder of the group. Their plan to leave Craft in the forest so he become. Their plan is to leave Craft in the forest so he becomes food for the wolves, bruising up Craft's cheek for no reason. They figure they can leave Nora tied up in the forest for the wolves as well, but they seem to believe Nora can control the wolves and nothing they do to her will lead to her dying, and it will backfire on them. It's like, man, medieval times, not that great for women. Wanting to do as little killing as possible, they leave Craft tied up in the forest for the wolves, taking Craft's horse and believing Holo is dead as Craft cries on the ground. At least in this situation, he's still alive. Like, consider that a win. Craft manages to get up off the ground and uses the smoldering ashes of the campfire to burn the ropes binding his hands enough to break out, but not without some birds to be a bit of a prize. Running back down the path to where he left Holo behind, Craft trips over, trying to keep mud and water from getting onto Holo's cloak. Holo then returns to Craft, still clothed and already aware of Remedios Trading's betrayal, and annoyed that Craft is injured because she would have arrived to help him. She then laughs about how the one thing treated with care by Craft was her cloak. It's like, yes, because it's a cloak. Holo states she may kill humans, and that if this plan failed, she couldn't continue her travels with Craft. She had knelt before the giant wolf of the forest. However, she's more upset by why Craft cared so much for her cloak. With Remedios Trading's betrayal in play, Holo wants to take out Mr. Romero for such an action using her wheat, but Craft shouts they need to save Nora from Martin first. Craft says Holo could easily take out Martin and his men to save Nora, but the issue is that Holo is a wolf and to Nora being a shepherd, which could lead to a fight. It's like, that would not be a good thing. Not caring about whether Nora and Holo fight, Craft asks if she could save Nora from being unjustly murdered, promising to do whatever he can to fulfill Holo's wish of returning home. Holo says she'll do it, and that she might kill some of the people that have gotten on her nerves, stripping naked as to not ruin her clothes during her wolf transformation, and asking Craft to close his eyes. It's like, yeah, valid. She tells Craft to get on and that gripping her fur tightly won't hurt her. Following some talk about Nora and her planning not to be a shepherd anymore, Holo takes off running as Craft holds on for dear life. Catching up to Nora and Martin and his group, Wolf Holo leaps over them, howling, and cuts them off, while also allowing Craft to get off it so she can do her thing. Wolf Holo attacks Martin and Remedios Trading, sending them flying through the air, while Martin orders them to protect Nora. Martin then screams at Nora to protect him since there's no one around still standing. It's like, rather quickly, they're just like all gone and he's just the only one left. And it's like, I'll pay you if you protect me right now. It's like, that's not how it works around here, buddy. Nora and Wolf Holo prepare to fight as Craft watches, purple lightning lighting the scene. And no, that is actually how I wrote it. It's purple lightning lighting. As Nora sends Anek in to attack, and he goes down with one swipe of Wolf Holo's paw. Nora screams as Wolf Holo charges at her, baring her teeth to attack Nora, as Kraft watches in horror. However, in reality, that doesn't happen. Wolf Holo does still leap at Nora, but Nora stops the next attack, realizing that instead the leap is aimed at Martin, who's behind Nora. Kraft arrives on the scene, which leaves Nora a bit confused because she thought he was dead, which is then compounded by him saying that the giant wolf is Holo. It's like, what? Okay. Holly didn't kill Martin because gold wouldn't be enjoyable to have in her stomach. It's like, I don't think anyone would like to have gold in their stomach unless it's like the gold leaf. Which, I don't know why our society gets so obsessed over like edible gold. We had a period of time where we got obsessed over edible gold. Nora asks how Kraft is still alive, explaining that the merchants said that he and Holo were eaten by wolves. Which would be ironic for Holo. Kraft tries to explain when Martin wakes up suddenly, calling Holo a monster and getting a crushed leg and rear in response. It's like, ooh, bad choice of words. Martin shouts that he didn't betray Kraft, Holo and Nora, but Remiro Trading did. But Kraft calmly states that lie will not work against Holo. It's like, we know you're working for the company. It's useless lying. Turns out Remiro's trading company didn't have enough money to pay for the scheme, and that their debts would consume the remaining profit. Martin tried to plead that he and Kraft are similar, but Kraft punches him and says they are not similar, which makes Holo laugh and Nora be shocked. It's like, dang, Kraft knows how to throw a punch. Kraft tells Nora that Remiro Trading was planning to kill her, which she did have a slight inkling about. It's like, making it very obvious. Since the gold bag is worth 600 gold, and that they were betrayed, they could split the gold 200 pieces each and flee Ruvenhagen. The other option is to still smuggle the gold and help out Remiro Trading despite their betrayal. Wolf Holo doesn't want to agree to the second, potentially better option, but with Kraft begging so much, she lets him decide with Nora. It's like, yeah. What would be the right choice, honestly? Later on, Wolf Holo asks Kraft for the truth about why he bought the fact that smuggling will increase the about why he brought up the fact that smuggling will increase the value of the gold tenfold, and Kraft reveals there wasn't enough gold, and that the bag was filled with rocks with gold on top. That 100 Luminaire gold worth of gold was only enough for Mr. Remiro to recover from bankruptcy and not have the money to pay Kraft and Holo off. Wolf Holo tells Kraft to get on because his foolishness has rendered her speechless. While Wolf Holo is running, Kraft says that they're not saving Remiro Trading for their sake, but instead for their own profit. Wolf Holo doesn't understand how Kraft could turn this situation into profits, and his plan to make Ramiro Trading pay for what they did. Holo enjoys some wine while waiting for Kraft to do his business with Ramiro Trading, which involves tying up Mr. Ramiro and wanting him to buy the smuggled gold for 500 Luminones gold. When Mr. Ramiro declines, Kraft reaches into the fireplace and reveals the hidden compartment and grabs out the emergency money to take, and he'll sell the gold to someone else. Kraft does say that Mr. Ramiro can split the payment over 10 years, that with such a large trading company, 500 Luminones gold would be easy to pay off over that time. Ramiro finally agrees to the payment plan, and Kraft says that the money will be owed to the Rowan Merchant Association, who will be certain to collect on their money. Money, 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 money. My teeth. Jacob hugs Kraft, glad to see him again, crying about how worried he was for Kraft, and glad that he returned to Ruvenhagen. Showing Jacob alone with Ramiro Trading, Jacob is amazed that Kraft pulled something like this off with no money, and Kraft plays off smuggling as not doing much. Jacob offers 30 Luminones gold for the loan right up front, and Kraft will even get another 100 when Ramiro Trading gets back in business. However, with the debt payment, Nora's share in the plan, and some other stuff, they broke even with the loss. It's like, So the current profit is 0? Holo asks if they can trust Nora, but they would just chase Nora down to get the gold back if she ran, and that the amount of distrust Kraft had in her. She doesn't ask her second question, instead focusing on Nora returning soon with the smuggled gold. Outside, Holo asks her second question on whose name Kraft called out during Nora and Holo Wolf's standoff. Kraft says he called out Holo's name, but she calls him a liar, which he admits to because he doesn't remember himself. It's like, okay. He believes he would have called out Holo's name because it's a bit shorter than Nora's, which isn't really much of a reason, unless you're trying to annoy Holo. Holo punches Kraft out of anger at something he would actually believe, and seeing Nora approaching, she tells Kraft to call out a name. What she didn't account for is the time hitting 7 AM, meaning the bells will ring, blocking out whatever name Kraft yells out in even her own voice. Kraft doubles down on Holo's name being easier to say than Nora's, and Holo calls him a fool. It's like, yeah, he is a bit. But he outsmarts you just by waiting. That's a fairly... Yeah, that's... Now it's done. Good apple. Well, now we're into episode 13. In Craft, Holo and Nora enjoy a massive feast to celebrate the success of their gold smuggling plan, where Craft can continue as a merchant and Nora can become a tailor. Nora shares her stories about working for the church as a shepherd that amaze Craft. Holo is completely taken in by the arrival of the main course of meat, but doesn't want some. Continuing their conversation, Nora says that sheep love salty things, and not knowing that it's important for their health to do with that. But not knowing that it's important for their health to do with their digestion, nerve function, and hydration. Fun fact for you on the sheep. Kraft heard of a faraway town that used sheep as a torture method by having the sheep lick the prisoner's feet covered in salt, which is based on the supposedly real goat's tongue torture method, but he forgot the name of the town. The real goat's tongue thing, the goat's tongue torture method is my own research, by the way. As Kraft goes on about sheep torture, Holo tries to grab herself some meat using the carving fork, but it falls off the fork. Yeah, wow, okay. Kraft asks Nora if the sheep have tried licking her hand before, and they have, usually after she's eaten some dried meat. He mentions how Anek is quite obedient to Nora, although she notes there were some times when he tries too hard or is a bit stubborn. Kraft and Nora keep talking until Holo clatters the carving fork on the table, looking pale and collapses to the floor, seemingly too drunk. While passed out, Holo thinks back to when she lived on the fields of Paslow, when she was only reminded of the concept of time on festival days. Paslow had a lot of festival days from harvest and planting festivals to festivals for good weather. Holo is glad to have gone with Kraft because each day brings something unique, comparable to her hundreds of years of life. She has travelled and lived with other people in the past, gained unforgettable memories as well, like going to the beach. And it's the only time the beach is ever visited in the anime as I know so far. Currently, her mind is always preoccupied by Kraft and what he's up to. The only time recalling her birthplace with sad nostalgia was when they first met. Holo wakes up back in her bed at the inn, seemingly remembering that Kraft carried her the entire way back. Thinking about why she ended up exposing her weak side, eventually blaming Kraft for her fainting, misconstruing what Kraft said and thinking he likes something about Nora. She gets upset that Kraft is not by her side in her time of need, thinking he's a failure of a male. God, there's no winning with you. Holo. Hearing Kraft returning, Holo acts like she's asleep and waking up from the light, only to see Kraft's stern face looking at her. Kraft's not happy she kept her unwellness from him, because what if this happened while they were travelling, that even a small incident can lead to death. He's glad Holo's okay, and asks if it's a cold or sickness, but she thinks mere exhaustion caught up to her. Kraft thought for a moment that Holo got sick from onions, but she's not a dog, who are highly allergic to a compound in onions that causes anemia. Yeah. I learned about something about dogs in the wolf anime. Huh. Holo does regret wasting the wine and meal, But rather smartly, Graf grabbed the leftovers and brought them back to the inn. Checking Holo's temperature, Graf confirms she has a fever, which she blames on him because his fingers are hard and similar to a wolf's nose. It's like, yeah, that's an interesting detail. Graf says that Holo has to stay away from meat for a while until she recovers, putting a folded wet cloth on her head. Most likely wet with diluted vinegar, which was a traditional medicinal treatment, or medical treatment back then. Medicinal is very different from medical. Holo worries about the heavy price to pay when Kraft's kind to her, and he jokes he should be saying that. The next time Holo wakes up frustrated, immediately wondering where Kraft is, then Yuitsu taking care of the sick means grooming the sick one's fur with their tongue and huddling together. One, you're not in your wolf form. Two, I don't think Graf can do that. Graf returns to the room again, not fully believing when Holo when Holo says she can't sit up. And Holo asks if he brought more water for her. At the mention of apple wine, Holo tries to get up, but the covers are too heavy for her, so Graf removes some of them. When she drinks the apple wine, Holo finds out Graf diluted it, but she thinks he diluted it too much, which makes her think something was wrong with her nose. And Graf is surprised Holo doesn't know much medicine. Not that he did either, having to run to a trading house and reading through translated medical books in a panic. It's like, at least one of you should be somewhat of a trained medic. He learned that sickness is when the balance of someone's body crumbles, and how things like exhaustion or miasma can cause it, along with more astrological beliefs of sickness. It's like, yeah, let's avoid those ones. Those are where the crazy people are. To heal someone, it requires making use of the 4 temperaments of the human body, which are warm, cold, dry, and moist. Moist. And the balance can be achieved with the food that the person eats. Holo's devilish delight of apples is perfect to help her recover, and if that's the case, she'd rather eat fresh apples over diluted apple wine. However, apples are medically categorized as both a cold and dry food, meaning she can't actually have them. It's like, why did you say I could have them then? Just take it away. That's mean. Since sick people are often dry. The reason for the apple wine being so diluted is that strong alcohol is considered a hot food. I find it sexy myself, but I wouldn't say it's a hot food. Ho is disappointed with what is essentially lightly flavored water, asking what food Kraft has for her. But since she has an exhaustion fever, he's focusing on cooling her down first and replenishing her moisture. So it's cold and moist. Upon hearing the meal Kraft has in mind for her, which is wheat grains simmered in sheep's milk with slices of apples and cheese, Holo jumps up and demands it, not caring about the reasons why. Wait, but apple is a cold, dry food, wasn't it? Asleep again, Holo has another dream about her birthplace and the wheat fields, and while nostalgic, they both seem to have something repulsive about them. Both of them had a sense of having an existence above others, and performing her responsibilities she never wanted to do, but had to. Before long, Holo was shackled to Paslow, and the villagers depended on her for her power, revered her because of her size, and honored her because she was useful. Yeah, that doesn't sound like a good relationship. That sounds like an abusive relationship. And, well, nah. Holo never asked for worship, but she couldn't abandon Paslow and let herself be imprisoned for hundreds of years. It wasn't until Kraft that someone gave her a friendly smile, whenever her nose twitched at the smell of food, even if he's impudent. Waking up to Kraft looking over her, he asks if she can get up, but Holo shakes her head that she can't. Kraft asks that Holo take good care of him if he ever gets sick, which she asks if the traditions of Yotsu are acceptable. But with Holo's brilliant nose, she won't let Kraft get the same way as she is right now. So wait, you can smell... you can smell sickness? Alongside light? What's next? Can you smell cancer? Kraft apologizes for not noticing sooner, but wishes that Holo told him sooner, since he's quite dense about medical stuff. Holo agrees with Kraft, whom she expected to be slow to notice a certain sickness that doctors can't even heal. Demanding food. Holo takes in the delicious smell of the meal, not caring that Kraft burnt his hand with the hot food. Wishing Kraft to spoon feed her the meal, Holo and Kraft create the moment only shown in the second OP of the 2009 anime. Yeah, in the 2009 anime, we do get to see a moment of, like, Kraft feeding Holo exactly like what we see in the reboot, but we never see it in the original. Which is interesting that it's so early, like, it happens at this point in the plot. Like, you would think it would be, like, a bit later in the plot. But no, it's right here. Holo believes the food would taste better with more apples, but more cold apples might make her a bit melancholic, and Kraft wants her to be a little quieter. Shush! With the amount Holo ate, Kraft thinks she'll get better in a day or two, but there's no need to rush, since they'll be travelling by cart for a while after they leave Ruvenhagen. Holo doesn't want Kraft to leave her alone in the room, so he sits down to discuss what she wants to eat for dinner. Thinking about it, Kraft reminds Holo no heavy food, as her stomach may not be as energetic as her appearance. Holo requests the same food that she just had, but the problem is that sheep's milk spoils easily without cooling techniques, meaning good sheep's milk is expensive in the afternoon. Kraft says he'll ask Nora for help finding some good sheep's milk, which upsets Holo at the mere mention of Nora's name. Seeing as a good guide to milk, Kraft asks why Holo treats her like a sworn enemy, curious to the past of wolves and shepherds. Laying back down and speaking in monotone, Holo says she's the one in the wrong, but as the like or dislike of something isn't based on logic, and Kraft gets what she's saying. Kraft goes to return the small food cauldron downstairs, but not before Holo asks him to return after doing so, which he promises to. Holo wakes again to Kraft's footsteps in the late afternoon, and he brought Nora to see her as well. Nora asks if Holo is doing well, and Holo explains that her exhaustion got to her. Since Nora is here, Holo asks her something she's always been curious about, which is the greatest secret to guiding sheep well. Nora's answer, in her opinion, is having a generous heart, which surprises Holo momentarily before she roasts Sheep for thinking they're all smart, leading to both girls laughing and Kraft joining in. Returning to the mum and daughter that we met in the first episode, she says that's the end of the story, asking if her daughter thinks of the merchant as a troublesome sheep. The daughter asks if the story really stops there, to which her mum confirms it doesn't, and wanting to hear more, and so her mum continues. Man, that really just... that went browner faster than I expected. Well, now we're in the second... We're starting in the second half. We're past the halfway point with episode 13, which was the first unique episode of the show so far. Well, other than the first episode, but like, story-wise. Let's get into episode 14. Kraft and Holo are back on the road, heading towards the cold winds of the north. Kraft wanting Holo to hurry up with the brushing and put her tail back under the blanket. Holo is annoyed that Kraft is using her tail like a heating unit, but relents when he compliments her tail. Kraft has a thank you gift for Holo, which turns out to be 3 feathers, so she can pretend to be a nun without needing to perform any missionary activities of any kind. Holo knew Kraft was lying all along, but she was hoping for an actual gift. It's like, lady, take the feathers or take the road. She asks if they're nearing Crimson, mostly wanting some warm food because she's tired of eating cold porridge in the cold weather. According to Kraft, Crimson is currently opening a huge market in preparation for their big festival called Ladra Festival, which gets Holo excited. At the festival, they'll have many different kinds of food from the different kinds of people visiting Crimson. I apologize if my reading is not that great. My eyes are sort of blending sentences together because I'm looking at white screen. Like, black text on white screen is not a good thing to look at. Holo brings up the concern of Kraft's coin purse not being able to handle her purchases of food. Kraft prepared some money on the side for snacking, saying to think of it as the money he couldn't spend on the honey-pickled peaches in Ruvenhagen. Yeah, the honey-pickled peaches came up and then just never got anywhere. Poor Holo. He even plans to rent a reasonable place for them to sleep at, but Holo doesn't want her snack purchases to be used as an excuse later on in the journey, like sleeping together in a single bed. As payback for Holo's teasing, Kraft calls out that she snores a lot, and that she's not even his type. Momentarily stunned by Kraft saying she's not his type, Holo recovers swiftly to say that he likes her when she acts fussily, before calling him a fool, regaling about the stupider the male, the more they like the weak. If Kraft wants Holo to be the weak princess, he must be the stalwart knight, but reality is nothing like that for them. Holo does remember the one time he did act like a knight, back during the training arc in the underground tunnels, and how it was the first time anyone protected her. Kraft apologizes for saying she's not his type, and Holo does say she wouldn't mind sharing a single bed in exchange for 2 plates of food. Holo asks what kinds of food this region has, and it's mostly fish. But Kraft won't reveal it. And it's mostly fish, saying they do stuff like steaming the fish with vegetables and meat, or seasoning with herbs and grilling it. Kummerson has their own special way of preparing fish for the dish, but Kraft won't reveal it. I accidentally read a bit ahead. Smelling out the carts, Holo suggests they buy something nice for them to have for supper, explaining that the smell has been wafting past her nose for a while. At the small trading post, Kraft asks one of the people about buying some fish, but all the merchant's fish have been reserved by his regular buyers. Asking if Kraft is a travelling merchant, the merchant mentions that he could buy fish from the fishermen at like half a day's travel away. Kraft corrects the merchant's assumptions of him planning to do trade, saying he's after some fish for dinner. Recognizing the merchant's thinking of new business ideas on the spot, Kraft calls him business oriented. Man, apples. It's always delicious. The merchant asks if Kraft's going to be staying in Kummerson, and he answers they're here to see the winter market and festival. According to the merchant, most lodgings are usually sold out in the days leading up to the Ladra festival. Kraft says he'll go to his merchant association to ask for help, and the merchant asks which association Kraft is with, which is the Rowan Merchant Association, which is the same as the merchant Kraft's talking to right now. What convenience. Kraft nearly says it's divine intervention that they met, but remembers that those words are forbidden. However, the merchant, whose name is Fermi Amati, is also an Orthodox believer from the south himself. Kraft introduces Fermi to Holo, saying they're travelling together, but not married. And Fermi is immediately enamored by Holo's beauty. Seeing the feathers, Kraft confirms that Holo is a travelling nun, and Fermi asks if the hardships of travel are like trials from God. Fermi says he might be able to secure a room for Kraft and Holo by asking one of the inns he works with. Kraft says that's too much to ask for, but Fermi responds that he's always thinking business and hopes that Kraft and Holo eat plenty of fish at the inn. Taking Fermi up on the offer, he quickly has Kraft and Holo set up in a nice room overlooking the festival by late afternoon. In the room, Kraft receives a letter from a fellow merchant that was waiting for him at the trading house in Kummerson. Reading what it says gets a laugh out of Kraft and hands it to Holo to read, but Holo can't read with valid reasons to consider any language difficult to understand. It's like, you speak it. You should be able to read it, right? So Kraft reads the letter to her, and it's a warning about the price of armor since the Grand Northern Expedition got cancelled for the year. What luck to get that message now. Holo brings the topic back to food, wanting to go eat, but so they go downstairs where Fermi is waiting for them, pacing. Kraft thanks Fermi for the room, but Fermi gets more excited when Holo speaks to him about the food over Kraft. Gone from smiling beauty to food fiend, Holo devours her way through a fish on a stick, leaving Kraft a bit perturbed and mentioning how Fermi would say they pulled a scam if he saw how she eats. It's like, yeah, she eats like a wolf, you could say. Holo notes that the fine wine reminds her of home and that the fish is delicious, saying that Fermi has a good eye, which Graf agrees with, noting Fermi's young age. Graf is amazed that Fermi is already dealing in such large amounts of products, which makes Holo ask about Graf's wares and why he doesn't deal in eye-catching stuff, reminding him of the armor incident of Reuvenhagen, which, in the timeline, isn't that long ago, I would say. He's confident that, while not pretty, he can turn a reasonable profit from what he has, and slowly calls Holo beautiful, only to get roasted by her. Her reason is that males get carried away if women are too kind to them, doing that to Kraft to keep him on his toes about compliments. Kraft goes to say that next time he won't be so nice, but Holo interrupts him to say that kindness matters in a male. Holo mentions how it's easy to forget what something looks like in 10 years, but she'll never forget the smells and tastes, knowing that the wine is similar to the one in Yoitsu. Kraft then remembers the storyteller back in Porozon and asks Holo if she always drank such strong alcohol, and since she's drunk a lot, she'll feel it tomorrow. The next morning, Holo is hungover, looking like she's clawing at some imaginary animal. Kraft tells her to stay in bed and that he'll prepare a water jug and basin for her, telling her to stay in bed. Kraft heads out to the big market, finding his friend Mark, and talking with someone that was just preaching about the blessing of Pitola's mountain god, which always happens to Mark when they learn he knows their language. He mentions there may be more profit from a mountain god than a god that never leaves its golden shrine. Mark agrees and says that the gods of harvest are usually beautiful people, and Graf smoothly says Mark's wife is beautiful. Damn, boy, what a player! Getting to business, Mark asks if Kraft brought him a profitable proposition, or whatever that word, proposition, yeah. And Kraft answers that he has nails from Reuvenhagen for Mark to buy, despite him being a wheat business owner. It's like, I'm selling wheat. Why would I need nails? Do you think my wheat needs some iron in it? Kraft brings up the idea of selling the nails alongside the wheat, saying they're a necessity for people from the north wanting to protect their houses from snow. Mark asks how many nails Kraft has, which is 120 nails 3 pate long, 200 nails 4 pate long, and 200 nails 5 pate long, with their quality assured by the Reuvenhagen Blacksmith Association. Offering to buy them all for 10.5 Lumionaire gold, Kraft says that's too cheap. Since the cancellation of the Grand Northern Expedition, unnecessary swords and armor are being melted down, meaning the price of nails have dropped. But Kraft believes that's only happening in the south, especially with there being no point to expending precious fuel in the process to melt down metals at this point of the year. Kraft throws out an offer of 16 Lumionaire gold, but that's too expensive for Mark, and the two bargain back and forth before selling on 14 2/3 Lumionaire gold. Mark asks if Kraft wants the payment in cash or credit, and he opts for credit, which Mark is relieved to hear since everyone wants cash during winter. Calling out his assistant Lant, a little kid, he tells Lant to move the nails from Kraft's cart to his so he can sell them later. Oh, that was a tough bite. Mark asks how long Kraft will be staying in Kumerson, and Kraft says he'll be leaving before the snow makes it too hard to travel. Since Kraft will be staying until the end of the festival, Mark invites him over for a drink at some point before he leaves, wanting Kraft to meet Adele again, or Adele, not to be confused with the singer. And also his kid. It's like, I don't think he had a kid in the original anime. Kraft is surprised by how much Mark has changed since the last time he saw him, remembering that when he started trying for a kid. Mark talks about how hard it is to be a town merchant, having moments he wished to be a travelling merchant again, but he's glad to have settled down in one location for business with a family now. The good old family business route. It always works out in some way. Or it goes completely under. That night, Holo is right back to drinking the wine excessively, to the point she could get another hangover. Holo says that drinking such fine wine never results in a hangover, clearly forget in the morning where she was hungover. It's like, how to tell an alcoholic they have a problem? She figured Kraft didn't know of Yoitsu's location and was cautious of making her depressed by bringing it up, before calling him a fool for not calling her weak. However, Holo doesn't remember where Yoitsu is, so Kraft asks if she remembers any nearby towns, which leads to a clue of Nyohira, a pagan town famous for its hot springs that even drew in bishops and kings to relax. Holo knows it as a town that was famous as a place that helped heal wounds and sicknesses. Using the entrance and the lamp as stand-ins for Paslo and Kumerson at a distance between them, and that puts Nyohira around Holo's position on the bed. Kraft asks where Yoitsu would be in relation to Nyohira, and Holo points southwest and says that it would take her 2 days with her legs, which roughly would take a month by cart. Oh boy. We're nowhere close to the end of this, are we? Thinking to himself, Kraft realizes it'd be too hard to canvass the area to find Yoitsu by himself, and asks if Holo could make her own way home when they reach Nyohira, which she can. Remembering how Holo doesn't want to be alone anymore, Kraft says not to think of it in a bad way, and that he can wait in Nyohira while she goes to Yoitsu and come back. But it's too late as Holo starts shutting down, even though Kraft says he'll help her as much as possible, not wanting him to be overly concerned about her. Holo knows she's measuring things by her own standards, how humans grow old in the blink of an eye to her. She has grown to enjoy Kraft being by her side and spoiling herself with his presence, before claiming she's gone drunk and needs to sleep before she spouts more nonsense. Oh, Holo, don't you ever change. We're at episode 15. I'm getting a little bit tired because it's so much talking to do. Well, to start off episode 15, Kraft has a dream about the sewer incident from the training arc before waking up and leaving while Holo sleeps. He visits Mark again to ask about if Kummerson has a town chronicler, which Mark believes as people who get paid to write a diary. Correcting Mark on the fact they note the history of towns, Mark is just annoyed they get to make money by sitting and writing all the time. Mark does know a chronicler who's rumoured to be a runaway heretic that got kicked out of a convent. Kraft explains he's hoping to learn about the old stories and legends of the North. Kraft doesn't want to be showing up on the chronicler's doorstep randomly and asks if Mark knows a middleman. Checking if Kraft wants someone from the Rowan Merchant Association, Mark suggests going to an old merchant named G. Batos, mentioning how he does business with people no one should be doing. Kraft adds that he's planning to go to Nohira, hoping to talk to some northerners about the route and situation there. And Mark says he'll look around for Kraft, which is a big help. This one is juicy, but difficult to bite through. Asking for one last thing, Kraft wants to buy some delicious bread and asks Mark to introduce him to one of his best customers. Getting back to the inn room, Holo finally wakes up and smells the delicious wheat bread, which is lucky because Holo is hungry. Holo grabs for the bag immediately before asking if Kraft was having any, but he had some earlier, so she gets to have it all. Well, what's in the bag, at least. She asks if they can attend the festival now, but they can't yet, which upsets Holo, which gives her the information that he's weak to those sort of things. She follows this up by asking why she can't go exploring the town, but Kraft knows she'll do so even if he says she can't. Which Holo confirms she's definitely the troublemaker of the group. Through and through. Kraft gives her a silver coin to go spend on what she wants, but she suddenly doesn't see the value of going out alone. Holo wants to tag along with what Kraft is doing, but he does state he's seeing someone. She even says she'll stay away if it's inconvenient for her to stay close, but Kraft says he might be too busy the entire day, asking if she can wait out today. Since Kraft will be busy, Holo says she'll wonder Kummerson, and if she brings someone back, she wants the room alone with them. But she said that to get a cute expression from him. It's like, oh my gosh. Sorry, I had something in my teeth. Kraft keeps thinking about the storyteller from Perozon and how the story ended with the town of Yoitsu being annihilated by a monstrous bear, hoping it's not true. At the trading house, the barkeep tells Kraft he'll recognize Gibatos straight away, describing him as a large man with the stature of a coffin crushed vertically. Fermi finds Kraft at the trading house, so the two share drinks, thanking each other for the room and eating the fish. Kraft even mentions that Holo said Fermi has a good eye for fish. And Kraft still doesn't catch on to Fermi's simping for Holo. The ultimate simp arc. This is the simp arc. Simp and Pyrite arc. Simp and Pyrite arc is what I call this one. Oh, it's making me cough because it's so stupid. Fermi asks if Kraft is busy today, and Kraft explains he's meeting with Gibatos to ask him a few things. He was planning to show Kraft around town and discuss potentially broadening his view through talking with Kraft. Kraft mentions that Holo has been begging him to explore Grimmerson with her all morning, and since Fermi is free, he offers to show her around town. Fermi has been meaning to ask the inn about some purchases, so while he's there, he'll see if Holo's there and invite her out. As soon as Fermi leaves, Gibatos approaches Kraft to talk about the chronicler Kraft wants to meet to discuss the old stories of the North. And like, Kraft does have a moment of like, damn, he built, bro, built like a tank. Ugh. The apple is not doing that well right now. Gibatos finds Kraft strange for his curiosity, thinking he's looking for inspiration to make money from. Kraft doesn't reveal his true reason. He's saying he's doing it on a whim. And Gibatos talks about how he only recently got into learning the old stories after realizing the world he knows is very small. He knows nothing about the people that came and went through Grimmerson in its history, and that's why he decided to learn about it. To know about a world he never saw, or while Kraft thinks about his journey with Holo. Oh my gosh. I'm just looking ahead. I've still got 2 whole pages to read. Yeah, and I'm out of apple. The apple bits are just in my teeth. The downside of apples. Gibatos keeps talking about how his life could have been different if he didn't focus on profits so much when he was younger. Leading Kraft to a hidden corner of Grimmerson, Gibatos explains this area is the living quarters of those chased by the church, like alchemists. They aren't considered criminals in Grimmerson, but if they set one foot near Ruvenhagen, they'd be hanged, even though they're good people. Beyond the door, the area smells strongly of sulfur, making Gibatos question Kraft if he dabbles in medicine, but Kraft just knows about it, and knowledge being a merchant's weapon after all. Kraft notes there's a lot of birds with feathers littering the ground, and Gibatos says that not all poisonous winds are bad, but they do have a be wary if a bird dies. Blocking his nose from the smell, Gruff asks Gibatos if it's profitable to do business with alchemists, sensing a lot of risk working with them. Gibatos mentions they buy a lot of gold, silver and copper, as well as iron, lead, tin, mercury, sulfur and phosphorus, which surprises Graf on how normal the items are. People think that alchemists mostly dabble in magic, but they're actually very similar to goldsmiths, with some researching magic. Reaching the chronicler's house, a lady opens the door and talks to Gibatos. Amazed he walked around the mountains of Horam unscathed. She quickly clocks Graf's thoughts of her being a witch, but he wasn't thinking that, asking if Deanne Rubens is home. However, she's Deanne Rubens, knowing that her name sounds like a man's name, and asks to be called Diana. Inside, Graf apologizes for the sudden visit, but she's not concerned by that, more insistent on being called Diana. Graf asks her about the old stories from the north, which surprises her because she thought he was here for a business deal. Gibatos knows Diana would have shown Graf the door if he was there to discuss business. Diana doesn't know if the stories she has will satisfy Graf, so Graf brings up Yoitsu, which was destroyed by a bear that hunts the moon. The moon hunting bear, or Irawa will Mahend, has many legends surrounding it, but Graf is more interested in Yoitsu itself and its location. Diana thinks if she has anything to Yoitsu's location, and points a finger at Graf to silence him while she's thinking. She remembers about a town called Lenos, located at the source of the Rom River that runs north from Proania, and Graf knows it as a town that sells lumber and fur. Since Graf knows the town, it'll be easy to tell Graf the old story passed down from Lenos. Diana tells the story about a lone wolf that appeared in Lenos, a wolf by the name of Holo of Yotsu. Since Holo was so tall, everyone had to crane their necks upwards, and they thought she came to bring divine punishment. Instead, she just said she came from the deep mountain forest of the east to journey southward. Holo loved the wine and sometimes transformed into a young girl to dance with the villagers, her form younger than her age and complete with a tail. After a while, she promised the villagers of Lenos with good harvests and continued on to the south. From that year on, Lenos's harvests grew rich and everyone started calling her Wheat-Tailed Holo. The story has helped Graf a lot, and there's only so many mountains east of Lenos, giving him a tremendous clue. Graf starts to say he wants to show thanks to Diana, but she stops by pointing her finger again, just waiting to hear a story from Graf, one untwisted by the church. So Graf starts telling the story of Holo. So this is a meta story within a story situation, or what? Also, how does Holo know this stuff? After some time, Graf and Gibatos return to the main city, and Gibatos mentioning that it's been a while since he talked about legendary dragons and cities of gold, and saying that he dreamed of being a knight at one point in his life. Graf thanks Gibatos for his help, and Gibatos was glad to, since people complained about him visiting Diana alone. He also got to hear an interesting story, hoping to be able to hear more in the future, which Kraft is fine with. He'll share stories if he wants to. Well, he will just share stories because he can. That night, Kraft returns to Mark's shop and meets with Adele, and Mark is behind the shop and invites Kraft around for a drink. Kraft gets right to business, asking about the information he asked Mark about earlier, and he asks Kraft what he learnt from Diana. Kraft says that he's changed destinations for Lenos, which is slightly bothersome for Mark, because he already has information about Nahira. On other topics, Mark asks if Kraft had a fight with Holo recently, having learnt that Kraft is staying at a nice inn with a gorgeous nun. Kraft doesn't have anything spicy enough to talk about over drinks, but apparently there's word that Holo has been walking around with Fermi. Kraft explains the situation of how he was busy all day, and Fermi offered to show Holo around Kumason since he was free. Mark warns Kraft not to underestimate Fermi because of how much fish he deals with, meaning Fermi is a good enough merchant to score the big fish. Holo. Kraft is unconcerned, saying that Holo isn't a frivolous person, surprising Mark with how confident he is. Mark says he'd give up if Adele was walking around with Fermi because he'd have no chance of getting her back, lying to her when she appears out of nowhere. However, Fermi wouldn't mind burning him up with jealousy. Because she would use that fire to bake Fermi a pie. Kraft returns to the inn room to find Holo wearing a scarf and absolutely wasted, having to help her get undressed. He knows how expensive the scarf looks and asks if she had him buy her anything else, but Holo's already asleep. Hearing a small clatter on the ground, Kraft turns around to see a golden cube on the ground. The next morning, Kraft is disappointed in Holo making Fermi buy her something because she'll make Fermi broke if given time. Kraft asks if Fermi asks Holo about their relationship, worried about their stories not matching. Holo's story does match what Kraft's story is, with an extra detail about her having a huge debt to Kraft, which doesn't make Kraft sound like a good person. Oh. Asking about the golden cube, Holo gets excited because a fortune teller was using it as a die that could see through fate. Kraft makes fun of her for thinking that the golden cube could be used for a high price because it's a natural mineral called pyrite that it chipped off in that shape when mined. However, Holo gets the last laugh when she reveals many people were buying the pyrite and into the fortune teller's story, and they were buying to heal sickness and ward away evil. Fermi successfully bidded for the die, and indicating to Kraft how popular it was, and everyone was quite excited. Even Holo enjoyed it. Kraft commends the fortune teller for taking advantage of the festival atmosphere as a clever business strategy. Lant then shows up to their room with a message for Kraft, a message that has Kraft running to the trading house. Oh, that was a bad bit. And that's the end of episode 15 right there. For this episode, I'll be ending the episode here. For YouTube, links will be in the description to both the channels and the Twitch videos. Okay, check out. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you know when the next video comes out. A ding, a ding. I'm Psycrafter out.